What's going on, guys? It's Pete Nova from the Face Off Sports Network. I am back with my Week 9 wide receiver rankings slash tiers. Got an exciting week ahead of us, so let's just kind of jump right into it. Um, Shift over my screen here. So yeah, my rankings are in order here. The first wide receiver this week is going to be Justin Jefferson, coming off a 19.5 fantasy performance last week in PPR. 8 catches, 115 yards on 9 targets. I mean, Justin Jefferson's matchup proof at this point. I mean, the Rams were 11th when it comes to points given up to the position. Had a great week. He takes on the Indianapolis Colts, who are 18th against wide receivers this year. My next wide receiver is going to be CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb has a smash matchup this week going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who are 25th when it comes to points allowed to the wide receiver position. Lamb is coming off a 39.6 performance in fantasy and had 13 catches for 146 on 17 targets. My third wide receiver this week is going to be Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase plays the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 8th when it comes to points given up to the wide receiver position. I feel like this number is skewed a little bit. Many teams haven't had to put their foot on the gas to score points against the Raiders to win football games. Ja'Marr Chase coming off a 20.4 performance last week on 11 targets. T. Higgins should be back, but that may help him when it comes to drawing attention. And, so I expect Ja'Marr Chase to have a good week. So he's going to be my wide receiver 3. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 4 here, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, 29th when it comes to points allowed to the position. A.J. Brown hasn't had an enormous amount of volume, but the big playability has been there. He's had over 84 yards in every single game this season. He's only played in 4. And, last week had 13.4 points last week with 5 catches on 84 yards. Jacksonville is a very, very good matchup for A.J. Brown. I could see him finishing number 1 this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be my wide receiver 5. He's had a little bit of an up and down year, but last week, 18.7 points against Tennessee. Just not a great matchup. Tennessee's good against defending wide receivers. He takes on Green Bay this week. I expect him to have a bounce back week. And they're 14th when it comes to giving up points to the position. My next receiver is going to be Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa is back. First game back, 6 catches, 72 yards on 9 targets. They play Buffalo, and these games in Buffalo tend to be very high scoring with Buffalo and Miami. It is at Buffalo. I expect Tyreek Hill to do his thing, be locked in as a top 10 receiver this week. I have him ranked as my number 6. My next receiver is going to be Malik Nabers. Not a great week, or it hasn't been great since he's been back from the concussion. 8 points, 14 points in the last 2 weeks. He takes on Washington, who is 21st when it comes to points allowed to the position. And in his first matchup against Washington, he had 10 catches for 127. Now, this isn't the same Washington Commanders defense. They are better than they were when they last played, but I expect Malik Nabers to have a really strong week. And to close out this tier, it's going to be Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is the 8th wide receiver on my list. First game back, 7 catches, 106 yards on 9 targets. He looks fine, and he plays Seattle. It's not an easy matchup, but I expect Puka to do his thing and be solid for fantasy this week. Okay, so my tier 2 is going to start with Drake London. Drake London takes on the Dallas Cowboys. I do expect this game to be rather high scoring. He's taking on the Cowboys, who are 12th against wide receivers. London coming off a down week, probably his second to worst week this season, but I expect him to have a nice game. Terry McLaurin is going to be my wide receiver 10 this week. Terry plays the New York Giants, and historically, Terry McLaurin's been really good against the Giants, who are 15th when it comes to points given up to the position. Garrett Wilson is going to slide in as my wide receiver 11 this week. Even with Devontae Adams back, I mean, His target share has been great, 9, 8 in the last 2 games, 20.5, 22.9 target share with Adams on the team. He plays Houston, who's 20th when it comes to points given up to the position. And this is a must-win game on Thursday night for the Jets. So I expect Garrett Wilson to be involved early and often. Jaden Reed is going to be my wide receiver 12, closing out this tier. Jaden Reed has not had the last 2 weeks. He's been a best 2 weeks. He's been a little disappointing, but he gets an awesome matchup in Detroit. Now, we don't know if Jordan Love or Malik Willis are starting, but I expect Jaden Reed to be really good. If Jordan Love isn't starting, maybe knocks him down a few pegs into the next tier for sure. But I like Jaden Reed this week in a matchup that it should be very good for wide receivers as my wide receiver 12. So that's going to close out that tier. All right. Going into tier 3 here, we're going to start it off with Cooper Kupp. Coming off the injury, Cooper Kupp, had a decent day for fantasy, 16.1 points. He did score that touchdown. He had 8 targets, played limited snaps, 37. He gets the Seattle Seahawks. Not the easiest matchup, but he's been good historically against them. My next receiver is going to be Devonta Smith, who's my wide receiver 14 this week. Devonta Smith gets the Jacksonville Jaguars, just like, A.J. Brown, 29th when it comes to points allowed to the position. He had 20 points last week. Definitely bounced back after a tough week before that. But outside of, week 7, Devonta Smith has scored 15 points or more in fantasy in every single week for PPR. The next receiver is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. He's dealing with that injury, but he gets Philly, who's 22nd when it comes to points allowed to the wide receiver position. We're going to operate if he's up and healthy, he's playing, and if he is, I like him in this spot as well. DJ Moore is going to be my next receiver in this tier. DJ Moore had a tough week last week, 5.4 fantasy points. Then he had a bye before that, and then played Jacksonville and had 6 points in fantasy. So it hasn't been the best few weeks for DJ Moore owners. He's got a monster schedule coming up. I expect that offense to try to bounce back after a tough week last week against Arizona, who's 24th when it comes to points allowed to the position. My next receiver is going to be Davante Adams. Davante Adams gets the Houston Texans, just like Garrett Wilson. This is a Jets team that needs to win. Davante Adams, 4 catches, 54 yards last week, 6 targets, 9 targets the week before in his first game with Aaron Rodgers. I expect that connection to get going in this game. And Jets need to win, and they'll make sure to find Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, I believe, in this game. Next receiver is going to be Tank Dell. Tank Dell plays the New York Jets. No Stephon Diggs Thursday night, same game as Davante Adams is in. I expect him to run the ball a decent amount, but Tank Dell should get his opportunities in this game. Volume should be there for Tank Dell, and so he's going to be my next receiver on this list. My last receiver on this tier is actually going to be Josh Downs, but the tier maker doesn't have a picture of Josh Downs, so for fun, I just put Michael Pittman there. But Josh Downs gets Minnesota 32nd when it comes to points allowed to the position. Joe Flacco is going to be the starter, and if Joe Flacco is the starter, we know what Josh Downs has been able to do with Flacco. He came off 22.2 points last week with Anthony Richardson, but I love Josh Downs this week, and he is absolutely a top 20 play in my opinion this week in fantasy. So that's going to close that tier out. All right, kicking off the last tier here, we're going to start with Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. gets a tough matchup with Chicago. He did break out a little bit last week, 6 catches for 111 on 7 targets and ran 34 routes. So I like Marvin Harrison Jr. in this game. I know Chicago's got a tough secondary, but I expect him to still be in this top 24 this week. Amari Cooper is going to be my second player in this tier. Didn't run a ton of routes last week, just 24 and 13 the week before that. Feels like Buffalo's kind of been easing him into the game plan. He gets Miami, who's third against wide receivers, but Josh Allen has been phenomenal against Miami in his career, and they've always put up a good amount of points. So I expect Cooper, who hasn't been heavily involved, to get more involved this week. My next receiver is going to be Darnell Mooney. I know Deontay Johnson's there, same as Josh Downs. Didn't have a picture of Darnell Mooney in this tier maker. So Deontay Johnson's the placeholder. But Darnell Mooney, I mean, what can you say about this guy? He's, a top 12 fantasy wide receiver right now this season in points scored. He gets Dallas in week 12, high scoring game, I expect. So Darnell Mooney, I mean, you can't sit this guy. He has to be in your lineup. I think he's a strong wide receiver too this week. And then Xavier Worthy, last week connected with Pat Mahomes for the touchdown, 8 targets in back-to-back weeks. They're getting him more involved. DeAndre Hopkins is now there. I do think that takes a little pressure off of Worthy, and I expect Andy Reid to find Worthy in this game, going up against Tampa Bay, who's 28th when it comes to points allowed to the position. So Xavier Worthy should be a wide receiver 2 this week. If not, you might have. I mean, based on where you drafted him, you may have, another player where Worthy's your flex, but he's a fringe mid wide receiver 2 to a flex play in my opinion this week. And then the last wide receiver here is going to be T Higgins, coming off the injury. Not sure if he's going to play this week, but he does get the Raiders. I think Jamar Chase and Higgins and this offense in general, like they're going to throw the football and try to push the ball downfield. And I think Higgins and Jamar Chase should benefit from this. This is a must-win game for the Bengals. And keep T. Higgins on your radar. If they lose this game, would not shock me if they moved T. Higgins at the deadline. We'll see how that plays out. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you for watching the video. If you have questions, please drop them in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys next time.